Good evening. I am very happy, very honored to be here among you. I thank the Presbyterian Church to host this event. I am also very happy to be accompanied here by Mr. Greg and Mrs. Mary Johnson, the fathers of our brother David, that is here, from Denver, and is living today with us in Kara, in Syria. And he decided, with the blessing of his fathers, to remain there, even though there is a threat, even though the situation is very difficult. Himself and the other members of our little community of 8 nationalities decided to remain there in sign of solidarity with the Syrian people and to pray for peace. And I ask you to join us in prayer and supplication, because those days we have a big battle in Kara. We made all the possible to if it was possible, to spare lives and make peace before the battle, but it was not possible. The rebels in Kara wanted to enter in negotiation, but 1,500 fighters came inside Kara, coming from Lebanon, and they imposed their own law to transform Kara in a battleground. So please pray for the good end of this dilemma. It is very difficult to talk today about Syria. What I want to share with you is a personal experience. It is an experience of a total dedication to the Lord in Syria, in the frame of monastical life. I can say personally that Syria changed my heart. It made me enter more deeply in what the Lord can ask his friends to do, to be aware of what is going on the social level, which was completely strange to me. It was very, very far from what we used to do. But when we were involved with our people all around us in this conflict, we could not remain not seeing, not hearing, and mute. That's why giving witness to the reality was for us another way to dedicate ourselves to our vocation. So I will share with you now a third way to approach the Syrian dilemma. You will see that the first thing that happened in Syria in the footstep of the Arabic Spring was those protests. The protest of people wanting freedom and democracy. You have seen this maybe hundreds of times, and also you have been told that there was repression, and because of the repression there was armed opposition that grew, and then Free Syrian Army, and then something more radical, and now everything is justified. Whatever is happening on the ground is justified, because in the beginning there was peaceful protest, and on the other hand, a ferocious repression. Our own experience comes from the fact that we are in Syria, in this monastery of St. James the Mutilated, which is a 6th century monastery, 90 kilometers north to Damascus. And we are in the diocese of Homs, which was, maybe until today, the real hotspot of the events in Syria. Our monastery is composed of, as I told you, eight nationalities community. You can see David, he is here on your right. Yes. And here is her mom and his mom. And so what did we do facing this conflict? Well, help people. Here you see you see here the woman of Kara, of our village. They come to ask me to be in solidarity with them to liberate their sons that were jailed because of political position. So we were, trying to help. Slowly by slowly, violence could be spreading very quickly. Here in Nebek, a few kilometers nearby us, we see this man has been thrown from his window because he is thinking differently. He is taking another way, facing the new orientation of the rebellion. The problem is that they are throwing him outside the window and he died, but it was the wrong person. So we had to face a lot of violence, but that was not reported in the media, and it was among the civilian population. It was outside the public realm. Here you have the map of Syria, and you will see that the hot regions, all of them are nearby the borders. What is happening? Why do we have such a fate? Why, for example, do we hear in Syria that there are so many displaced people? It is because the fate of the civilians, you have the opposition, armed opposition, they infiltrate civilian areas to liberate them. But in reality, people, they leave those areas and they become refugees. So we see the desolation of their habitat, and slowly by slowly, the families, they just flee. They take means of transport, and they go to, for example, safe haven, like in Damascus or in the Valley of Christian or in Lebanon, and they become, like beggars. They need social help, and this is very difficult for them, because in Syria, I was living there for 20 years. I have never seen a beggar. There was a system where everybody had the substantial to live. And so the difficulty is that if they don't want to stay in camps, like you have heard in Turkey or in Jordan, they have to rent slums. But wherever they rent slums, the violence will come also to reach them. You have heard maybe and maybe not, because it is very poorly covered by the mainstream media. These ongoing violence against civilians in Syria. Here you have the car blasts. Each car blast kills between 20 and 70 innocent people, and more than 100 are handicapped. They lose everything. And so we have a lot of mourning. We have a lot of widows, a lot of orphans, a lot of also destruction of the very precious heritage in Syria, mosques, synagogues, churches. And all this without any motivation, because this will not liberate Syria, you see. Despite all what the UNESCO is asking to safeguard the heritage of Syria, things are going worse and worse. Until today, we have a list of 50 churches that have been destroyed, more than 100 mosques, and many synagogues, among them the most ancient synagogue in the world, the synagogue of Jobar. Now you will see some scenes about the mass destruction. You see, the mass destruction is motivated by battles inside residential areas, and this is against the Geneva Convention. So, of course, you cannot have this only coming there. You have mass destruction weapons that are used, and we are calling always to spare residential areas, not to let any one of the factions transform the residential areas in battleground. Here you will see Aleppo. Once for me, it was one among the beautiful cities in the Middle East, and today everything is destroyed. The market is destroyed. It is a 13th century market, and it has been burned with 5 tons of gold stolen. I will have also to underline the fact that the infrastructure of Syria is being destroyed. Thanks to the Lord, yesterday, the spokesperson of the White House invited the opposition not to destroy the infrastructure of the Syrian government, telling them that it is not positive and it will not help Syria. I have to tell you that all the infrastructure of the state are deliberately and systematically destroyed. For example, municipalities, hospitals, schools, pipelines, electricity plant, all what pertains to the Syrian people is considered to be a property of a faction called the regime, and is destroyed, is spoiled. But in reality, it is the Syrian people who are losing those resources. The same thing happens with the factories. All the industrial resources of Syria are systematically destroyed. Only in Aleppo, 1,500 factories have been destroyed, and you have 30,000 workers that are jobless. And those factories, they were dismantled and taken to be sold very cheaply to Turkey. You have seen with me the ongoing violence, the justification of the violence, the destruction of the resources of the Syrian state and of the Syrian heritage. And now another plague that we have to face in Syria is the fundamentalism. It's not me who is saying this. Mrs. Hillary Clinton 1 year ago declared that the Syrian revolution, a legal quest of the Syrian people, has been hijacked by radicalism, by extremism. So what is the Islamic extremism? It has nothing to do with real Islam. Real Islam founded in Syria, prestigious civilization like the Umayyad dynasty, in Iraq like the Abbasid dynasty, in Spain you have a kind of relationship, pluralistic relationship with respect to the other, and we have been always living in Orient with our brothers and sisters from other religions. So what is the Islamic extremism? It has been created to topple USSR in Afghanistan. It is a kind of aggressive Islam, and it was created under the supervision, everybody knows that I am not inventing, the supervision of US. You know that Taliban and Al-Qaeda once were working with US against USSR. But today, if you want, the recycling of Al-Qaeda is fueled by clerics, is financed by rich countries like Saudi Arabia, and is supported by many so-called democratic countries. We see in Syria a galaxy of hybrid battalions, all of them affiliated to Al-Qaeda, expressing this fundamentalistic Islam. I will not say how many they are. They are 2,000, in fact, 2,000 groups, as reported in a study of The Economist. And Mr. Fabius, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in France, described them as disordered and heteroclite. And it is a problem because in any negotiation, you cannot rely on one head. You have many persons and everybody is mixed with everybody, and it creates a lot of chaos. So the problem also is that the leaders or the people who are professing such an aggressive and discriminatory Islam are very well received by the mainstream media. Here you will see Mahdi Harati in Al Jazeera, and you can change. This man is a Libyan. He holds the Irish citizenship, and he has created a battalion of 6,000 foreign fighters that are in Syria. He is received very respectfully in Al Jazeera and interviewed as a hero and someone very much reliable. Now, the problem also for the revolution, the Syrian revolution, is that those foreigners that come into Syria, and they are more and more, they pretend to fight for an Islamic caliphate, for an Islamic state, and not for freedom and democracy. And this was referred by the newspaper, the Daily Mail, that he protested before a chief of the rebels against the barbaric methods used with the captives, like torture and ritual beheading. The chief answered, "We do not seek freedom and democracy, but the Islamic caliphate." Caliphate is like kingdom. We change. The problem is also with this Islamic fundamentalism is the violence. It seeks to impose a law. Here in the democratic country, you are not, you cannot be obliged to follow a religion. You cannot be obliged to follow a certain behavior. Today in Syria, like here, Mr. Sheikh Abdel Salam Harba, a spiritual leader, he is giving a homily in the mosque, and he is saying, from now onward, anyone who will drink alcohol, he will be beheaded in the sewage. You understand that this kind of fundamentalism is not proper to the Syrian people, is not proper to the real Islam. We have never heard about being beheaded because we drink alcohol, but it is the real face that things are taking today in Syria. And you see the beheadings are getting more and more accustomed in Syria. We hear every day. Yesterday we heard about a young man we knew who is a Sunni, but he is pluralistic, he is open to dialogue, and he was beheaded in Qaryatain. I could not bring to you, it's too much graphic, his body with his head laying on his chest. It is terrible what is implemented in Syria today. So in Aleppo, which was a turning point of the cultural life in Syria and in the Arabic world, instead of having cultural centers and dialogue centers, here we have the Committee for the Obligation of Goodness and Prohibition of Evil, where you see the obligation of goodness. It means that we are obliged, people today are obliged to have special behavior, to do special things and to restrain from other things because of the belief of a little part of the population which is here armed Al-Qaeda battalions. The statistics of the Syrian sinister under such conditions are rising. Here the tolls in August 2012, you can read the different tolls, how many refugees, then how many internally displaced. You have 1,500,000 1 year ago. People in need, 2,500,000. But today, look how much. We have 7 million people in need, 5 million displaced, 1,500,000 outside the country, 56 orphans, and 275,000 handicapped. It is a real tragedy, and someone has said that it is among the biggest tragedies since World War II. Now, where do we go? For us, our experience and our endeavor oriented us to reconciliation through forgiveness in Syria. I would like to talk to you the achievements of the international support team for Musalaha in Syria. Musalaha means in Arabic reconciliation. First of all, please, the story of Abu Fayyad. This Abu Fayyad gave us a big insight for our work of reconciliation. Abu Fayyad, you see him with his this arrow, you know. We were in Homs negotiating for the settlement of a terrible conflict between a rebel stronghold of 700,000 supportive environment for the revolution and the surrounding of this stronghold. And people were together. You see here a Shia sheikh, a Sunni sheikh, the leader of Al-Qaeda, the leader of the Free Syrian Army, people also notables from all sides. So we remained, and the priest and myself. So we remained 2 days, negotiating, and there was big difficulty, and also, animosity. So Abu Fayyad, the name of this man, he stood up and he asked to talk. He told us, I want to share with you my experience. And he said, I have a unique son called Fayyad, 20 years old. I have nobody else. He is a student in the university. And once he was abducted and disappeared. We made everything to find him. It was difficult. We could not. After 6 months, someone called us by phone, and he said, "Do you want to see Fayyad?" We said, "Of course, and we are ready to whatever is needed." And so they said, "Tomorrow you will have him." So we prepared, he said, sweets and flowers and the neighborhood. His mother excited to see him. And a car passed and threw something. And it was Fayyad in a plastic bag, tortured and cut in pieces. I have this photo, but I cannot show it because it's too much graphic. And you know what Abu Fayyad said? He said, "Look at my boy, how beautiful he was. And look what they have done with him. There is no motivation, but I tell you, I forgive. Please do the same for the sake of Syria." And for us, it was an insight to continue a path which is difficult. You see, the reconciliation is a difficult position because you are not with one against the other. You are with everybody, and each one would like you to be with him against the other. So our mentor is the Peace Nobel Prize, Mrs. Mairead Maguire, leader of the Peace People in Belfast. She supported our strive for peace and reconciliation and invited me to Ireland. I am here with her, and we are lobbying around the world for the cause of reconciliation in Syria. Here we are invited to Geneva. It's the 4th time that I am invited to talk about reconciliation, and we are heard so much that we can we have very good ties with Mrs. Carla Del Ponte, who is inquiring on the violation of human rights in Syria. We collaborate with her. Mrs. Carla has been very audacious to bypass the politically correct, to say what she sees and what she finds out as real. Now I want to talk to you about the international peace and reconciliation visit to Syria that was done by Mairead Maguire with 16 peace activists. They visited Lebanon and Syria in May 2013. We visited many people, the prelates, the ministers, opposition fighters, pro-government tribes, all over, the Syrian population, Syrian opposition, rebel stronghold. We were addressing to everybody words of peace and negotiating, if possible, ceasefires, talking with Free Syrian Army handicapped, weeping with those who weep, praying for the dead, and to give you also a good sight, proeminent personalities supports reconciliation, like the patriarchs of Orient, the Lebanese patriarch. Here we are with Mr. Shas, with the second Vice President of Al-Nahda, Tunisia, Mr. Signora. Here we are in Bucharest, in the EPP big assembly. The Mufti, which is the supreme Muslim leader in Syria, endorses Musalaha. We are here with the Musalaha team, with him, and he gives me a Quran as a symbol of our relationship. Here I am with Sharon Stone. She is also very keen to find a way of a breakthrough for peace in the world, and especially in Syria. And here I am with the Dalai Lama and Lech Walesa, the very known rebel that worked in Poland. And here with Prize Nobel Muhammad Yunus, the big father of the poor in Bangladesh. He will have a good action for the rehabilitation in Syria. And finally, we are planting the tree of peace in the big park of Warsaw. As an achievement, I would like to underline the Muaddamiya evacuation. Even though some mainstream media tarnished this accomplishment, I can tell you that it is a genuine reconciliation breakthrough where mediators could bring to an agreement two factions that were ferociously aggressing one the other. So Muaddamiya had 150,000 of civilians, everybody fled, remain only the families of the rebels, like 10,000 to 12,000. And people were starving. I saw on the Facebook children that were really dying. And I could not hold this. I went to the Minister of Social Affairs, and I told that we must find a solution. She said to make things enter is difficult, but we will negotiate it. And I received, after negotiating, I received from Muaddamiya the wishes of the families that they would like to be evacuated. And so we arrived to an agreement, but this day, after we opened the barricade, the rebels did not allow the women and the children to come out. So I had to go inside. And I took a white flag, and with Sister Carmel and the reconciliation team, we entered inside the stronghold with a lot of danger, because there were 12 snipers, and we were entering without ceasefire. But we were well received, and then we entered in the city. Here I am crying, seeing this woman so thin because of starvation. We went to the military council. We had good moment with the rebels. Here a young fighter, and here also some of them are wounded, as you see. We had difficult moments because they were not united in their decision, and a battle was done with real bullets. Some of them wanted to abduct us, some other wanted to kill the team who was with me. Finally, a rebel came, a leader, and he made peace. He accepted us, and he said that we will share olives as a sign of peace. And like this, we could initiate this evacuation, which is historical. You see here the armada, humanitarian armada, coming to evacuate, ambulances, buses, volunteers, and hundreds of women and children begin to come out. In 4 times, we have evacuated 6,500 women and children, and in the last day, we had 650 men who decided to surrender, even though there was not a negotiation for this purpose. So the women and the children and the men who were evacuated from Muaddamiya in 4 steps, but in 3 operations, are a historical turning point to convince all the parties that through negotiations things can happen. Now, other neighborhood asked to do the same, and we are negotiating many other places where we can spare the bloodshed, we can spare innocent lives, and also the rebels, they can find a way to convert from a violent mean of opposition to a non-violent mean of opposition. Then, as reconciliation, we have to care about humanitarian aid to Syria. I will just show you a map. This map, you see how many, where they are, those who are displaced, the hot areas, you see the circles, and they move inside Syria to safe haven. But every time there is a safe haven, this safe haven is attacked. And so people are getting displaced once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. And we will pass, please pass, yes, more. So we have received international help here from the Italian government, from the Interpol, from we visit the refugee camps and also outside Syria, but also inside Syria. You see us with displaced Syrians from all denominations, and you can continue. Here, the Palestinians, you know, they are refugee twice because they were refugees in Syria, and now they are refugees from Syria to Lebanon. It is the fate of many populations in the Middle East, alas. So our mission is a humanitarian mission, a mission of compassion, a mission of dedication, a mission of love for any human being. And what we need in Syria today is food baskets, milk for children, pampers, medicine. We have been achieving also urgent projects like field hospitals, and we could bring a field hospital to Homs very quickly. Now it is working. You can pass. Yes, here it is. It has arrived to the Baas University in Homs. This university was chosen by the rebels and by the pro-government civilians as a place where everybody can enjoy. With the achievement of this project, we have opened a new project. It is a field hospital for Aleppo. I remind you that in Syria, 60 hospitals were destroyed, and so in many places, the civilian population does not have a hospital for medical care, and many people in the midst of the violences are dying because they don't have medical centers. So this is my expose, and you can now ask your question. Thank you, and forgive me if I have been too much prolix. Thank you.